Today we are going to learn the next very important process in the nutrition called absorption of digested products. So as you all know, absorption takes place mainly in the small intestine. So after digestion, the complex molecules are broken down to simpler ones, and those simpler ones has to be taken into the blood capillaries, that happens from the small intestine. So small intestine is the part where major absorption takes place, and it takes place through the villi present in the inner wall of the small intestine. And these villi, they are finger-like projections provided with capillaries, and also they have the, as you know, we have studied about the structure, lacteals. So through this villi, the process of absorption takes place. So inside the alimentary canal, the complex substances are broken down into simpler ones. Then the process of absorption has to take place. So apart from small intestine, in the mouth, stomach and large intestine also the process of absorption take place. So after absorbing the nutrients through the villi, they will reach the capillaries and the lacteals, and they will be entering the circulation. So blood circulation, and also they will become part of the lymphatic system. And this lymphatic system, as you know, at last it will be opening again into the blood circulation. So in this way, the nutrients will reach the circulatory system, and from there they will be carried to different parts of the body where they get assimilated or used up by the body for other making up molecules which are used for other metabolic activities. So the end products of digestion pass through the blood or lymph by absorption. Then, other than small intestine, the process of absorption takes place in the mouth, stomach, small intestine and large intestine. Now the process of absorption we'll see in detail. So it happens in the small intestine, and you know about the layers of the intestine or layers of the alimentary canal. They are the innermost mucosa, submucosa, muscularis and the serosa. So innermost mucosa layer in the case of intestine has finger-like projections. You can see the finger-like projections there. They are called the villi. These are the villi, finger-like projections called villi. And you know what is the advantage of villi? Villi increases the surface area for absorption of digested products. So inner lining has villi, and through the villi, absorption of substances, the simplest forms of substance, complex molecules like glucose, fructose, amino acids, electrolytes, etc. are absorbed through the villi, and they pass into the capillaries. You can see the blood capillaries, and also this yellow color, you can see this is the lacteal, and these are the capillaries, arteries and the veins. So through this they will reach the circulatory system. Then next is how these nutrients, simplest forms of nutrients, are absorbed into the intestinal wall. How this absorption takes place? So there are mainly two mechanisms for absorption of these nutrients. They are called passive transport and active transport. So two transport mechanisms are utilized for this absorption of nutrients. So one is called passive transport, another is called active transport. So we'll see what is this active and the passive transport. So passive transport takes place without expenditure of energy, without the use of energy. So just molecules simply diffuse from the intestinal lumen into the intestinal wall. So like nutrients and water mainly, we'll see what are the nutrients which are transported in this way. So passive transport without expenditure, no expenditure of energy, and again they can be categorized into three. So passive transport occurs in three ways, that is by simple diffusion, by facilitated transport, and by osmosis. So these three are the methods of passive transport. So nutrients are transported by these without the expenditure of energy. So here you can see the simple diffusion where the nutrients like simplest forms like glucose, amino acids and electrolytes like chloride ions are diffusing from the intestinal lumen into the intestinal wall simply according to a concentration gradient. That is, inside the lumen the higher concentration of these nutrients may be there, and inside the intestinal wall it may be less. So what happens, these nutrients will pass from its higher concentration to lower concentration. So it will be along a concentration gradient until the concentration becomes almost equal. So this is simple diffusion, a type of passive transport without the use of or usage of energy. So higher concentration to lower concentration, this is called simple diffusion. Then we come to facilitated diffusion, where the same way molecules like fructose, amino acid and all, they are transported from the intestinal lumen into the intestine by this facilitated transport. That is, it happens with the help of a carrier protein. This is a carrier protein, and with the help of this carrier protein only this transport of nutrients takes place, that too from the higher concentration to a lower concentration. Same way, from higher concentration to a lower concentration, simply the molecules will diffuse with the help of a carrier protein. That is called facilitated transport. So same way it will be along a concentration gradient, higher to the lower concentration. So that is called facilitated transport or facilitated diffusion. Then next one is called osmosis, where the water and solute, they move. That you are already familiar with osmosis, movement of water molecules from its higher concentration to a lower concentration. So you have studied across a semi-permeable membrane. So here the semi-permeable membrane is the cell membrane. So through the cell membrane, the molecules, water and the solute pass from its higher concentration to a lower concentration. So here dilute solution means more of water, and this water will move into the concentrated solution, whereas the lesser water molecules are there. Then until the concentration becomes equal. So higher to the lower concentration, that is also along a concentration gradient without the use of energy. So this from dilute to the concentrated solution. So now we discussed about the passive transport. Passive transport where energy is not needed, molecules diffuse from higher concentration to lower concentration. Then it is a slow process, and up to what time diffusion takes place? Only when the concentration becomes equal. So complete absorption of nutrients does not take place in the case of passive transport. So to aid that, next type of transport is called active transport. So here active transport, molecule does not move according to the concentration gradient, or there is no such concentration gradient. They can even move from lower concentration to higher concentration. And this process is little more or faster than the rapid than the passive transport. It requires energy. And one more thing, it requires a carrier protein. So these are the points. You just listen carefully. At last you can differentiate both. So active transport, they are faster, require energy, complete absorption of nutrients can take place, and they need a carrier protein for transport. So in active transport, now you can see that from lower concentration to higher concentration the molecules are moving, and this is the carrier protein. So you can see the ATP there. ATP is adenosine triphosphate, that is called the energy currency of the cell. So molecules in our body, all living systems, the energy is stored in this ATP molecules. So this ATP is a form of energy which is used for this active transport, and here sodium, glucose, galactose and amino acids, they are transported in this way called active transporter, where the complete absorption of the nutrient from the intestinal lumen to the intestinal wall take place. So complete absorption take place. So these are the points about passive and the active transport. Now you can see here studied the passive and the active transport. Now there are certain molecules that is fat molecules. That is the simplest form of fat molecules. They cannot be digested or absorbed in the way the other nutrients like amino acids or glucose are absorbed. So the absorption of fat is a little bit different from the absorption of other nutrients. And we'll see how these fat molecules are absorbed into the intestine. So these fat molecules, since they are not soluble in water, they cannot be directly absorbed into the villi. So they are actually further undergoing changes for their absorption into the intestine. So first, this insoluble lipid droplets. So they are the fat molecules. They will be first acted upon by the bile salts. So this is the lumen of the intestine. You can see that this is the lumen and this is the mucosa layer. So in the mucosa layer only we find this villi, isn't it? Lumen is the center space which you have studied. So this is a space of that intestine, and here you can see the bile salts are there. Bile salts act with this lipid droplets. So this bile salts, they will be acting with the lipid droplets. So the bile salts will act upon the lipids droplets to form micelles. So you can see the bile salts, they are acting upon the lipid droplets to form micelles. Then these micelles are moving into the intestinal epithelial cells. So once this micelles from the lumen of the intestine, they will move into the intestinal cells. So when they reach the intestinal cells, they will be coated with proteins. So as the micelles enter into the intestinal mucosa, they are coated with proteins to form small fat globules called chylomicrons. So the coating of this micelles with the protein is done with the help of certain cell organelles which are present inside the intestinal cells. And these chylomicrons then move into the lacteals present inside the intestine. So you know, lacteals, they are present inside the villi. So here they will be modified and they are forming the chylomicrons. and these chylomicrons enter into the or transported in the lacteals in the villi, which again will be opening into the blood circulation, or they will be reaching the blood circulation. So in this way, the fat molecules, since they are not soluble in water, they are transported with the help of bile salts into the intestinal cells, and there they are reformed into chylomicrons, which are actually entering into the lacteals, and from there they will enter the circulation or circulatory system. Now, apart from small intestine, absorption also takes place in the stomach, mouth and large intestine. So we'll see what are the nutrients which are absorbed through the mouth, stomach and the large intestine. So inside the mouth, certain medicines we are keeping under the tongue, they are absorbed through the buccal cavity, inner lining of the buccal cavity, and through that they will be absorbed into the body. Then inside the stomach, substances like sugar and alcohol and water absorption, these absorption takes place inside the stomach. So sugar, alcohol and water absorption takes place inside the stomach. And coming to large intestine, the absorption of water, potassium, sodium and certain drugs also takes place in the large intestine. So absorption of water, potassium, sodium and drugs take place inside the large intestine. So you can see these things are absorbed by the large intestine. Then these absorbed substances, what happens to these absorbed substances? These substances will be transported to different tissues of the body through the blood vessels. And when they reach the different tissues, there either they will form some other substances which are useful for the, or some other complex molecules which are useful for the metabolic process. And in that way they get assimilated. That process we call it assimilation. The body utilizes these nutrients in different parts of the body, it reaches and body utilizes it for its own activities. So that process we call it assimilation. So you can see that through the bloodstream these nutrients are being transported to different parts of the body. Now what happens after these nutrients get absorbed? What happens to the remaining undigested food? So the remaining undigested, unabsorbed food materials, they move from the small intestine, they move into the large intestine. That is the waste matter and some water molecules. They will be moving into the large intestine. So you know the parts of the large intestine, cecum, colon and the rectum. So through the large intestine they will be, as they are moving, the water gets absorbed. The water absorption takes place, and this waste matter with the help of mucus. So the large intestine produces mucus, which this mucus and this waste will be adhering together to form feces. The undigested waste material, we call it feces, and these feces will be moving through the colon and by the peristaltic movement of the colon. That is, the muscularis layers will contract and relax and push the feces through the colon, and as a result this waste materials move towards the rectum, and it will be temporarily stored in the rectum, and later on it will be let out by a process called defecation. That process is called defecation. Okay, so this is the process of, now we studied about the absorption of digested products. Now let us have a glance at the key points. Digestion and absorption. We are studying about absorption. Intestinal juice. The intestinal juice contains what all things? Disaccharidases. And these disaccharidases, they convert disaccharides to monosaccharides. Disaccharidase like maltose converts maltose to glucose and glucose. And another disaccharide called sucrose. In the presence of a disaccharidase called sucrase, it will be converted to glucose and galactose. Another disaccharide called lactose, in the presence of a disaccharidase called lactase, will be converted to glucose and fructose. Then dipeptides. So another enzyme present in the intestinal juice is dipeptidase. Dipeptidases, you can see the first one, dipeptidases converts dipeptides to amino acids. Then another one is called nucleotidases, which converts nucleotides to nucleosides, which are further converted to sugar and bases in the presence of nucleosidases. So and these two enzymes are converting or involved with the nucleic acid digestion. So nucleotidases and nucleosidases. Another enzyme present in the intestinal juice is lipases, which converts di and the monoglycerides into fatty acids and glycerol. And the intestinal juice is otherwise called succus ventricus. Then large intestine. In the large intestine, absorption of water, minerals and certain drugs takes place. Secretion of mucus, which helps in adhering the waste together as feces and lubricating it for easy passage. Feces is temporarily stored in the rectum till defecation. Absorption. Absorption is the process by which products of digestion pass through the intestinal mucosa and enter the blood or lymph. Transport mechanisms. Two transport mechanisms are there, active and the passive. Passive transport along concentration gradient. Three types are osmosis, simple diffusion and facilitated diffusion. Then absorption of fat. Fatty acids and glycerol are incorporated into small water-soluble droplets called micelles and with the help of bile salts and phospholipids and absorbed actively into intestinal cells. These inside the intestinal cells, these are reformed into small protein-coated fat globules called chylomicrons and transported into lacteals, which release them into blood. Absorption in different regions of alimentary canal. Mouth, you can see certain drugs are absorbed. Stomach, water, simple sugars and alcohol. Small intestine, almost all final products of digestion and mineral ions. Large intestine, water, some minerals and certain drugs. And assimilation, the substances absorbed from different regions of the alimentary canal reach the tissues through the bloodstream and they are utilized for various activities in the tissues. This process is called assimilation. And of course, last step called egestion, that is the digestive waste becomes solidified into feces and stored in the rectum. The egestion of feces, it is called defecation. It is called defecation. The removal of feces or the egestion of feces is called defecation, and it is a voluntary process which is carried out by peristaltic movement. So till now we studied all the steps of digestion starting from ingestion, digestion, absorption, assimilation and egestion.